Hey students, it's Nathan Hunt again with US Bank. Well, we're in lesson 4 of 5 of JA Our Nation, so let's hop right into today's lesson. Quick recall on last week's lesson, we talked about the groupings of jobs that share similar skills, and we went over a few key terms. This week we're going to talk about thinking like a job applicant and examine the important work readiness skills that are associated with such a job. So some of the key things that we'll also work through will be a scenario of someone that's decided to hire you for a job. You're going to describe that job and why you're the perfect fit, and also how you will prove that you're qualified. A couple of questions I'll start off by asking you. Do you have any siblings or friends that work? Can you think about the types of jobs that they do? What are some of the skills or the things that they perform as part of those jobs? Do they work in restaurants or movie theaters? Maybe they're in a public service job. What do you feel like the qualifications for such a job would be? Right? If we think about someone who works in a restaurant, let's say they're a cook. They'd have to have the skills to be a good cook so that the food would be something that consumers would want to purchase and come back time and time again. Or if they were a server, communication skills are key, right? Understanding, taking folks' orders, getting those accurately, getting them out on time, making sure they're well served and get good service. And it's an enjoyable experience for them at the restaurant or wherever that food chain may be that the consumer is purchasing from. Is there any kind of special training needed for such a job? If we used the cook example, they might need to go to culinary school, right, to be a great cook, or any other job for that matter. There are a lot of jobs that require specialized training, just as we talked about in some of the job groupings for last week. What about education, right? If you're going to be a doctor, let's say, that might require a higher education level than, say, someone who's going to work in a manufacturing position that might be an engineer, let's say, right? A 4-year degree versus any post 4-year degree that might be required to become a doctor. So with every job, there's a skill set required, and also in almost all cases, some type of education or experience that goes along with that job to accompany it. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how you might fit into some of those roles in the jobs that we mentioned. So someone looking for a job must have a certain skill set that an employer is looking for when they're hiring. And that's going to lead us to our first term for today, employees. And employees are defined as people who work for businesses. Now the inverse of that is the employer, right? The individual that employs or hires and pays the folks that work for them. Our next key term, resume. A written summary of a person's education, work experience, and skills. Job seekers, when they're looking for a job, typically will have a resume that they'll present to that employer as a potential candidate. Now, I've got a sample resume here that's in our workbook, and I'm going to hold it up real close to kind of see these 4 key things that are included in a resume: your name, your job title, your education, and skills. So let's just take a minute to talk about each one of these. So obviously an employer needs to know who you are, right? Your name, where you live, all those type of things to be able to uniquely identify you as a candidate or an applicant. Job title, right? What types of, what are you applying for? What specific position that's open or may become open are you interested in? Education. We just talked about this one. So you'd want to highlight any type of education that you have that might make you the best candidate for the position, right? Or that aligns with the job itself. Skills, the same thing here. So any unique skill set that you might have that would help you be a great candidate for the position at hand. And finally, work experience. This one's very critical in a lot of ways for jobs that are require some tenure or some history, right? Some jobs you can't jump right in, and they're not entry level positions, as I would say, right? And they require experience. So bringing up any past work experience or any other jobs that might be tied to the position that you're applying for. This would depict to an employer that you know how to do this, you've done it in the past, or you have unique traits or skill sets associated with this job that would make you the ideal candidate. So those are the 4 competencies that I would call out here from a resume perspective that will help you in promoting yourself as an individual, as an employee, to that particular employer that is doing the hiring. Now, in our last lessons, we talked about people who demonstrate critical thinking and problem-solving skills are very valuable to employers. Of equal importance are people who have appropriate behavioral skills, or as we call them, soft skills. Those soft skills are critical to any person applying for a job because you'll have a better chance of landing that job. Now, another key term that we're going to cover today is communication. And communication is written or spoken exchanges between people to share information. We just talked about the example of an individual that might be a server at a restaurant. It's very important for that individual to be a good communicator, right? To get orders, to understand what the customer is asking for, make sure it's accurate, but also to be an advocate for them, right? To communicate any needs that they might have and make sure that they're taken care of. So communication is very, very critical in day-to-day activities with any job. Well, now that we've talked about a resume, the importance of a good resume, and also the soft skills needed, we're going to talk about the next step in the recruitment process, and that would be a job interview. So an employer seeking to find a good employee to fit the needs of whatever position or positions are available would take a look at resumes, narrow down that list of folks that they feel are adequate for the position or possess the necessary skills, work experience, education, things of that nature. And then they might want to schedule an interview, a face-to-face interaction with a potential candidate to understand if that candidate is going to be the right fit for the job. So I'm going to take you through a mock interview as an example here of what you might encounter to see or expect to see during an interview with an employer. Now I want to walk you through a few of the questions you might expect to see on an interview for a potential position that would be open. The employer would bring you in, sit you down. Remember, an interview is face-to-face, right? And one of the first questions that they might present to you is, my company's looking for someone who is polite, who's friendly, and has a very positive attitude. You would be given a chance to respond, right? And in a very open-ended way, you'd explain to that employer how those attributes fit your personality, right? Are you polite, kind? Do you have a positive attitude? And you might give them a couple of examples with each one of these questions to further demonstrate that you're suitable for this job or you're the right candidate. Now, another question they might ask. The position has lots of deadlines. How are you at getting work done on time, right? So this would be an opportunity for you to talk about, one, being on time to work to be able to meet those deadlines, and also being conscious of what the deadlines are. You might even give an example of a project that you were assigned, even if it's just like homework in the past, right? An example that we have today, that you met the deadline, how you did it, right? How you prioritize things to make sure that you hit that deadline, and that you understood the importance of getting things done on time. So this would be another opportunity for you to provide an example to that employer of how you depict those skills or how you put them into action in your own lives. Now let's think about one more question. How are you at working with others, right? Can you work well with others? And as you responded to that question, you'd be demonstrating or depicting a situation to where you worked with others. And I want to challenge you guys to think about that. Have you been assigned a project? Maybe you had a parent help you with a science experiment, or you had another student that you had a presentation with. right? You had to share in those responsibilities with them, work with them, whoever your partner was for that assignment, in order to get the job done. So this is a great opportunity for you to verbally communicate your ability, your skill set, right, to be able to accomplish those things and show that employer that you are truly the right person for that job. Now, at the end of any interview, it's very important that you thank the individual for taking the time to interview you, right? They didn't have to, but they certainly chose to. So you want to be thankful for them, mindful of their time, and also it's very important. A good firm handshake goes a long way, and good eye contact, right? They need to understand that you're an effective communicator and that your eyes are on them at all times. You're a very attentive listener, and you're very thoughtful in all of your responses. It is okay during any interview to take a moment to gather your thoughts, to make sure you fully understand the question, and also to make sure that you're fully depicting your response, right? So take your time, be thorough, and make sure that you're addressing every question as it's asked to you. Well, let's recap on a few key terms from today's lesson. Our first one, again, was resume, a written summary of a person's education, work experience, and skills. Our second key term was communication, written or spoken exchanges between people to share information. Our third term was job interview, the discussion between a potential employee and employer to help decide if the job is a good match. And we also talked about soft skills, personal attributes and abilities that are needed in most jobs. Now, I want you to keep in mind, in order for a business to be profitable, you have to hire the right set of individuals to work for that company, right? We have to have problem solvers, folks that are good at critical thinking, and the individuals that are very good at communicating and working with a team. So it's very important as you consider yourself for any type of job that you might apply for, how do you fit into that role, right? What are the skills associated with it that best suit you and best suit the job? And also depicting to an individual that might interview, an employer that might interview you, your skill set, your ability to problem solve, give them some great examples, and being able to communicate well with them so that they know you're the right fit for the job. Now keep in mind, the things you learn now in school will benefit you as you go down the road in the workplace, right? Every skill set that you learn will help you be a more qualified candidate or employee for any potential job that you might seek in your career in the future. I want to challenge you guys as we close out today's lesson. A takeaway is to think about a job that you'd like to have in the future. We've talked about a few of those in the past lessons here. Now, as we talked about in the resume, right? I showed you guys a copy of a sample resume with those key elements. Think about a job that you'd like to work in or a position that you'd like to hold. And I want you to create a resume based off of that to depict the skill set that you would need. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be the skills that you possess today. It could be skills that you're going to attain, whether it be through education or technical training or whatever it might be in the future to apply for that job. So let's role play a bit. You guys think about a job you'd like to have, fill out a resume. Now remember, it's got to have your contact information in there so that they can schedule that interview with you if they need to. We're going to assume that the resume that you fill out is going to be very thorough, depict all the skill set needed for whatever that ideal job you'd like to have is, and that you're going to make the assumption that an interview will result from that. So think about that resume, go ahead and fill one out, right? Remember the core things that you'd have to include: your name and contact information, the job title that you're applying for, the education that you have, the work experience you have, and also any of the soft skills that we talked about today that you feel would be critical for that person looking to hire someone to understand about you. So, students, that wraps up today's lesson. We've got one more left for JAR Nation. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a great day.